What's going on, guys? Happy Friday. Long week at work, but it is the weekend and now it's time to get to work creating some content for you guys, trying to continue this dream, make this a YouTube dream happen. 3,000 subscribers by the first of the year, that is the goal, and I know we can get there. So if you don't mind, hit the subscribe button right now and help me out. Nice catch. So I just recently hit 44,000 miles on the car. We did an oil change with Mobil 1, but I did mention in that video, and if you haven't seen it, go check it out. If you're interested in how to change oil in the VQ37, specifically the Q50, go check that video out. I'll put a card up across the top if I can remember. But I did mention in that video that I plan to change to a different brand of fluid, and I've been wanting to make this change for quite some time, and I didn't do it with the oil this time around, but we're getting ready to change the rear gear fluid, the rear differential fluid right now, and I'm gonna start making that transition to Motul Gear 300. Don't really know how you say it, don't really care. I've heard it said both ways, M-O-T-U-L. It's going to take about 1.5 of these. I think this is 1 liter. It's 1.05 US quarts, 1 liter. It's going to take about 1.5 bottles. So make sure you got 2 of them. This stuff is really meant for high speed, high performance, high friction, high heat applications. So that's why we went this route. Before I start messing with this, I'm going to go change and then we'll get to it. Better. First thing you're going to want to do is get everything together that you're going to need for this project, including the oil itself, the gear oil itself, and the tools. And I'll show you right now what you'll need. All right, so a couple things you're going to want. Obviously, you're going to want the gear oil. 75W90 is what these cars take. You're going to want a fluid pump, which you can get anywhere, basically Harbor Freight, Amazon. I'll put links in the description for Amazon. One with a dip tube. Obviously, that goes down into your quart of fluid, and you're going to want a ratchet and a 10 millimeter Allen socket. Good for the drain plug and the fill plug. We have a torque wrench as well, so you make sure you tighten it to the proper specs. I think it's 23, 25 foot-pounds of torque, something like that. And obviously you want a jack, a pan of some sort so you can drain the rear fluid in, and there you go. All right, now that you got your tools assembled, next thing I would suggest is take the car around the block a couple of times. You want to get that gear fluid warmed up for one thing to help it drain better, but you also want to get any of that gunk and grime and any metal shavings or anything that might be in there suspended in the fluid, and that way it drains out rather than being settled on the bottom. So that's what we're going to do right now, and then we'll back it into the garage and get started. So I chose Motul for a couple of reasons, mostly because it's meant for high performance vehicles, high speed, high temperature, high friction applications for transmissions and rear ends. So that was my choice. Royal Purple is another one I've used back in the day. It's really good for high performance applications, but it doesn't have really the proper additives for noise control. And after 44,000 miles on this car, I can actually hear the rear end whine a little bit. So that's another reason I went with Motul. It is really good for taking away that rear end noise. So if you have a vehicle you like to push to its limits, I would recommend the Motul 300. Now, if you have a G37 or a Z car, something like that with an LSD, you want to make sure you choose the proper gear fluid for an LSD. I think Motul, I believe it has a limited slip specific gear fluid. It just has the proper additives, that additional friction for the limited slip set up in the rear diff. So you want to make sure you're getting the proper stuff. We have an open diff, so no need to worry about that. We're good with the Motul Gear 300. Okay, so we got the drain plug here and the fill plug's up here on the side. Kind of hard to see, a little bit hard to difficult to get to, but we'll do it. Little bit of a different angle. Drain plug there. Up beyond the exhaust pipe, there is the fill hole. So it's tucked in there. All right, you're definitely gonna want an extension to get to the fill hole. And we're gonna start with that plug first. Here we go. Oh, jeez, Louise. She's in there pretty good. That's what I'll say. Here she is. Opening the fill plug first is just basically like opening the little breather cap on a gas jug. It is just going to allow the fluid to flow out of the rear diff a little bit faster, a little bit better. All right, break the drain plug loose. I'd be lying if I'd said that I didn't break it loose with a longer wrench first, but I did. Okay, so now she's loose. Pan underneath it. Little tip, suggestion, don't get rear diff fluid on your clothes because it stinks horribly and it does not come out of your clothes. I got it on one of my shirts. I kind of slid through a little that had dripped out at one point back in the day, and I think it took probably 10, 12 washes before getting the smell out of the shirt. So no joke, don't get it on you if you can help it. All right, let's let it drain. Yep, you can smell it from here. While that is draining, look at this. We have been pushing the car pretty hard, and those are metal shavings. The end of the drain plug is magnetized, and it catches all of the little metal filings. And it's normal to have this in a rear end because you got lots of gears working together, especially if you're beating on the car a little bit, pushing it pretty heavy. So we'll wipe these off and then thread it back in. It's a pretty good suggestion. Thread it back in, see if you can pull any more out of there. It really only becomes a problem if you're seeing some large shavings. These are basically fuzzy filings, no big deal. But if you're seeing big chunks of metal in there, you may have an issue. After threading it back in, we got just a few more out. So I think we're pretty good. All right, we're all cleaned up. Let's clean up the drain hole and put the sucker back in. So you need to fill until the fluid starts running out of the fill hole. So we're switching bottles now, and we'll continue pumping. And it's starting to drip out now. extra for good measure. There, so it's running out pretty good. All cleaned up. I'd say all in all it took about a quart and a half. Maybe slightly over. I let a bunch run out and then topped it off again a couple of times because I was taking too long putting the drain plug in. I was kind of messing around, and then I dropped the plug and I had to look for it. So I'd say about a bottle and a half. Well, that's really it, guys. Pretty simple project. The most difficult thing is cleaning up all your tools afterwards, to be honest. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. I will definitely get to them. Again, about a bottle and a half of gear oil and you're good to go. One of those pumps, you need it. There's a couple options. I'll link the option in the description below to the one with the little fitting on the end, a little kind of spring or barb fitting. It just makes it simpler. You can stick it in the hole and it'll hold itself in there without falling out. I had to keep a hand up there to make sure the hose didn't back out of the fill hole. Other than that, really simple 10 millimeter socket, Allen key socket style. A torque wrench would be helpful to make sure you're getting it tightened down to spec. You might want to change the oil, at least think about changing the gear oil every 30,000 miles or so, especially if you're beating on the car, if you're racing it every weekend or regularly, or you're running around in the mountains like I like to. You're putting a lot of stress on the rear end, especially if you're doing a bunch of burnouts and whatnot. So think about changing it regularly. You want to keep everything fresh and flowing. You saw the drain plug on this thing. There were a lot of filings, so the rear end oil on this car probably hasn't been changed at all. So 44,000 miles or so, something I probably should have done right when I got the car, but I was focused on other things first. But now we're good. We're all fresh. We're all ready to go. Look forward to continue running this car and see what we can do with it. So stick around. A lot of good things coming up this winter. I appreciate all your support up to this point. 3,000 subscribers by the first of the year. I know we can get there. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.